I wonder. Obliviate! It didn't work. I still remember this movie. All right, folks. The last film in my Harry Potter revisit, Crimes of Grindelwald. And this review, and I put that in quotes for a reason, is going to go a little bit different because this isn't the only one that I already had a review up on, because I did have a review for the first Fantastic Beasts up before, but it was old enough and I had enough distance from that film that, I could really feel I could give it a fair assessment. Crimes of Grindelwald didn't come out that long ago. And I went back and checked my old review. My thoughts have not changed on rewatching it. So rather than rehash a whole bunch of broad stroke things that you can see in the original review, instead, I busted out the pen, I took notes, and I'm instead going to go through a bunch of things that I hadn't noticed or had forgotten or failed to mention before. Some of these things might also be repetitions of things that I mentioned before, but I'm just going to run down a complaint list because yes, this movie is not good. Like, before I dig into this, let me be clear on a couple points. One, the inherent story threads being utilized could have worked, but there's too many of them. They're stumbling over each other, and this thing does not feel like a properly structured film. If these same storylines had been put into a novel that had the page count for them to breathe, maybe they would have worked. Condensed down into a film that doesn't have a novel template to work off of, but instead trying to do as many characters, as many things as don't necessarily even need to be together in one place, it doesn't work. And the other thing I'll be clear on is the acting is not the problem. Everybody delivers a good performance. Yes, even Johnny Depp as Grindelwald. So those things are not the problem. And I will even say that if they had removed some of these plot lines and focused down on a few of them, it could even have been good. But it's not. It stinks. So let me get to this. This one I'm pretty sure I mentioned in the previous review. That opening is just dark visual noise. I'm pretty sure part of the reason it's so dark and it's raining and there's lightning is to basically muddle the special effects, because as much money as they spend, it's actually really hard to integrate that sort of thing. It's actually much harder to integrate live people into a complete CGI thing than it is to, at this point, to take a CGI thing and put it in the real world. But that's what they had to do in that setting, because you've got this CGI background and the carriage and the thestrals, but you have real people in it, and it probably looked like crap until they added all that stuff. But now it just looks like dark, muddy crap. I don't think the baby killing was necessary. You're actually going to have a running theme of things that I thought, yeah, they didn't need to do that. There was no point. They take over this muggle house, kill the people inside, and they kill a baby. I don't think that was necessary to go that extra step. I don't think anybody was in doubt that these were the bad guys. That seems needlessly cruel. I feel like it's a retcon that we find out that Newt was effectively in New York on some sort of mission for Dumbledore. It gets muddied a little bit when he talks to Dumbledore and he's like, well, I know you orchestrated it for me to be there, but I don't like how that rewrites the previous film to a certain extent, because he just stumbled into what was going on. He was there for the creatures because that's what he cares about. And now it's like this weird orchestrated thing that Dumbledore put together, and that's unnecessary. That adds nothing. The baby nifflers are awesome. I'll just reiterate that. The baby nifflers are amazing, and I want one. Okay. She only gets a couple of scenes, but the character of Bunty, who I guess is Newt's assistant, has the line when he's going to be going into the water. He says, you should take your shirt off. And then, when she gets splashed with water, she literally gasps. She gasps when she's made wet. It really annoys me when awkward characters or characters who are supposedly, socially inept, have prospective love interest just tripping over them. It is in complete contradiction to the characterization. And granted, Bunty doesn't figure into the plot, but this thing has no less now than 3 women basically tripping over themselves for Newt. I take the same issue with a lot of Spider-Man's love life. To be clear, this is not specific to this film, but man, that drives me nuts. Okay, Queenie. And we're going to come back to this. The starting point with Queenie, I think, is pretty sound. The idea that she got back with Jacob and then enchanted him makes sense because she has a lot of insecurities about herself and about her place and about whether people are actually willing to be around and stick with her. So her doing that to him initially, honestly, that's a sound starting place. Goes off the rails later, but it starts out well enough. Okay. Why in the heck does Newt take the Nifflers to Paris? Like, I know the real reason why. It's because a Niffler factors into what happens at the very end, and it's a logistical thing. But, like, no. In universe, in narrative, he leaves a note for Bunty. Going to Paris, I took the Nifflers. Why? Why would you take the Nifflers? There's no it's one more thing you have to keep track of once you get there. Why would you do that? It makes absolutely no in-story, in-character sense. It's only there as a logistical plot thing for way later in the film, which is very lazy, contrived writing. I.e. bad. Credence, okay, seriously, Credence probably has the story that I am the most interested in finding out, but they skipped way too much. His whole thing of trying to figure out who he is and how and what place he has in this world, what his history is, I actually found rather compelling. And Ezra Miller was a lot more commanding on screen in this than he was in the first Fantastic Beasts film. But it has to share space with all this other stuff going on, and they skip so far ahead. We went from, maybe he died, maybe he kind of lived to now. He's in Paris, has a whole other life set up, and an accomplice. It's like we skipped at least half another movie to get here. And that I would have been interested to see. Like, really irritating right there. Which, of course, brings up Nagini. Okay, so a couple things about Nagini. The first is, look, I don't get it that she's a sideshow attraction. Because in a world that has transfiguration and animagi, whatever, where those things are very common, what about a woman who can turn into a snake is so unusual that it warrants putting her in a freak show? Yes, I know she's a maledictus and she will eventually become the snake permanently, but the wizards present don't know. They're just taking the guy's word for that. For all they know, they're just watching an animagus who can become a snake. So what about her is worth putting in a friggin' sideshow? And also, it's very strange to me, and I didn't think about this before, that they make Nagini sympathetic. That's just weird, and it makes me feel very odd about how triumphant it is that Neville Longbottom basically beheads a woman now, retroactively. That's what he did at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. I don't know why. The whole, Nagini, period. I don't know why. What else we got? Okay, so it's said that Credence is the only creature who could kill Dumbledore, and that's why Grindelwald wants him, except Grindelwald kind of has Dumbledore covered with the blood thing, but I will come back to that. Not to mention the fact that Grindelwald has the Elder Wand. In any one-on-one combat scenario, any dueling scenario, he's gonna win. Why does he need this? Again, maybe it ties into the blood thing, but I'm gonna come back to that. The Hogwarts scenes, they are there for no reason other than nostalgia. I will admit it's nostalgia that worked on me. And no, I'm not going to bring up the fact that McGonagall should be too young to be a professor at this point, because it's something that I didn't know at the time watching it, and I wouldn't know if other people weren't complaining about it because they've memorized the ages of characters because they know Pottermore like the back of their hand. I'm not that kind of fan. I don't care. I understand why other people do get upset about that if they do care. I just don't. So, for all my nitpicks, I'm moving on from that. Why does Grindelwald have any particular interest in Queenie? Like, he personally gets involved in her temptation, and he even tailors parts of his speech to his followers and would-be followers at the end to be sure to hit a note that will appeal to her. Why does he care about her? I mean, I grant he needs followers in general, but he clearly doesn't care about his followers because, he has the guy who, I guess, doesn't have enough faith, burns in the fire. But even aside from that, there's one of his followers who moves against the Aurors and gets killed for it. And he basically knew that was going to happen and he wanted it to. So he doesn't take these people's lives very valuably. He has no reason to value Queenie. So why? Now, we as an audience value Queenie because Queenie is awesome. And Queenie was great in the first film. And Queenie and Jacob is adorable and we want that to succeed. So we are invested. Why is he? Why does he care about this woman? Why is he putting personal time into corrupting her? I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. Polyjuice is way too common. Like, part of the reason that the film Chamber of Secrets, that film got away with polyjuice is because there was a lot of emphasis put on how hard it was to make. The recipe was in a book that was in the restricted section. It required a lot of complicated ingredients. It took a month to brew. But Newt just happens to have some in his pocket with his brother's hair so he can look like his brother at any time. Holy plot convenience, Batman. Give me a freaking break. Rowling needs to remember that originally this stuff was supposed to be difficult to get because now, everybody has it. She's going to give everybody a time turner next? Might as well at this rate. Oh, God, you want to talk about pointless. All right, I'm actually going to tag two things together here. So there's a recurring thing of things that are there for... things are there to give a plot mechanic, logistical justification for something that doesn't need it. So, example number one, Newt... Tina thinking that Newt is engaged. That misunderstanding. Why? The only purpose that I could come up with for that is they wanted to pretend the awkward sort of chemistry they had in the first film, and they figured they had to roll back her comfort level, because if they just picked up where they were, they'd get more, it would not feel the same if the relationship was actually moving forward in some way. Except that Newt especially is so frigging awkward and Tina so uptight. By the nature of their characters, it would have made sense for them to be moving at a slow pace anyway. They didn't have to artificially come up with some stupid contrived misunderstanding that has zero impact on the plot whatsoever in order to roll them back and give them that chemistry like they had just met for the first time all over again. That's pointless. And the other one, okay, I told you I'd come back to it. The little blood thing and the oath that Dumbledore can't move against Grindelwald. I actually, at this point, hate that, because if you're J.K. Rowling, I mispronounced it as Rowling before, apologies, old habits. J.K. Rowling, if you are going to continue to assert that he is in love or was in love with Grindelwald, and that was a deep emotional connection, then you don't need a magical reason why he can't move against Grindelwald, because the idea that he worries that his connection to this man, that his love still lingers, he worries that he will falter in the heat of the moment because of his emotions and his history, is a way more compelling reason for him to not be able to move against Grindelwald, or for him to be resisting it and fighting, and absolute last resort, he does not want to have to go face to face with him because he thinks he won't do what has to be done because of his feelings for them. That is a way more baked in, character-based, compelling reason for him to not move against Grindelwald than this stupid, artificial, contrived nonsense. You didn't need it. With the things you had in play, with the things we already knew, you got the same effect. Okay. What else have I got? Oh, speaking of pointless, Lila Lestrange's half-brother, what's his name? Yusuf Kama. Holy crap. All he does is deliver exposition, except the exposition he delivers isn't even accurate. I went into this in my previous review, but oh my god, the friggin' structure of this thing, where Credence is like, who am I? And Yusuf Kama gives him this whole long-winded explanation of who he is, and then immediately after is like, no, none of that was true. Great, so you just wasted however many minutes of runtime telling us that because it wasn't true and you didn't even let us live and think it was for long enough that revealing that it wasn't true has any meaning. The thing that you were just told is in fact not true. Well, I hadn't even digested it, so I don't care. Oh, God. So, like, his entire character, absolutely pointless. It's not a misdirect if you undercut it that friggin' quickly. Oh, God. What else do I have there? Oh, okay. Props to this. The Lita's line to Newt. You never met a monster you couldn't love. That is a legitimately good line. I will give this thing credit where I can, when I can. There aren't many instances. Queenie's entire turn is unjustified and doesn't work. Again, if there were fewer storylines in this thing and they focused on her a bit more, they could have justified it. I could have bought it because they could have focused on a deterioration of her mental state. Instead, they pinned it on the idea that she really wants to be with Jacob, but then it makes no sense because once he rejects her because this entire thing is scaring her, that removes her motivation to side with Grindelwald, but then she does it anyway. And I'm not saying it would have been impossible to justify that, but you would have need to have us spend more time with a character so that we could understand why she would still make that choice regardless, and you didn't do that. Okay, oh, the fire dragons at the end, the blue fire dragons, and they fight with the red fire and they cancel them out. Stupid, pointless. It's there for the want of a more action-y climax because we've already had the theoretical emotional climax if it worked for you at all, which, meh. But, you know, that's just CGI noise as far as I'm concerned. The Blood Oath, I talked about that. Oh yeah, the Niffler that Newt just happened to bring to Paris, just happened to escape at the right time, and just happened to grab that one shiny thing. Holy frigging coincidence. Okay, and the one last thing I'm going to talk about here. So, like I've said repeatedly, there's too many stories vying for space. Now, I did finally kind of see how maybe they thought this was the way to go, because between Credence's identity and the hunt for him and Grindelwald, trying to gain power, and Queenie's fall and Lita and her baggage, they were constructing these parallel stories of the kinds of people who would join Grindelwald. Credence needing acceptance, Queenie, terrified of what she might lose, and Lita almost siding with Grindelwald, and she's got loads of baggage and damage. And so, but then she also shows that not everyone is completely susceptible. So between those and showing how Grindelwald builds his power, and the fact that I actually think Johnny Depp does a decent job in the part, I do see where there's kind of a point to it, but again, it doesn't feel focused enough. And you'll notice there's a name I didn't mention in that, Newt. Newt has no place in that story. He's just here because he was here in the last movie. His entire presence in this thing is completely unneeded, unwarranted, not justified by the narrative that is going on in here or the narrative that appears to be pushing forward. He's just there. And it's a shame because Eddie Redmayne is pretty dang good in this part, and the stuff with the magical creatures is some of the more enjoyable stuff from the film, but from any kind of narrative, plot, forward momentum perspective, it's also the most superfluous, and it could have all have been scrapped. And the overall plot would have stayed exactly the frigging same. This movie sucks. Crimes of Grindelwald, I'm done. You seen it? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Bunch of stuff to do. Like, subscribe. Support me on Patreon. You support me at a high enough level, you can force me to watch movies that I hate, much like this review was foisted upon me. There's other stuff to do as well. You can follow me on social media. There's links to stuff and things. Click on them or don't. At the end of the day, folks, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. Until next time, this council is adjourned. Oh my God. I never want to see this thing again.